Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, late night instant reaction. The Washington Huskies head on the road to one of the hardest places in the country to play, Corvallis. Cold, rainy day. And that is like the epitome of what Oregon State wanted for this matchup, a team that wants to run the ball, that's physical in the trenches. And the Washington Huskies, they get it done. And that shows to me when I was watching that game just how special this team is. Like we know they can win in a shootout. If you ask Michael Penix to go outscore an opponent, that offense is not getting outscored by many offenses across the country. But can you win one ugly? The Washington Huskies just showed us that massive win for the Huskies. We talked about them when the college football playoff rankings came out Tuesday night, sitting at number 5. They just went on the road and beating the 11th best team in the country. That committee, I will riot. I will get on here Tuesday night and riot if they're not in that top 4. Massive win. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Washington Husky fans. This is a program that it's a blast to talk about. You guys have been showing just a ton of support to the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Would love to hear from you guys as well in the comment section. Dale, I'm going to give you the tee box here. Michael Penix, the Washington Huskies head on the road, get the win. How we feeling?
I mean, I don't think there's a unit that's improved as much in the country as this Washington Huskies defensive line. I mean, that from last year, I thought was very critical. I thought their inability to kind of rush the passer, especially on the inside, their inability to consistently stop the run. But, like, you see how good those defensive tackles are playing. I mean, Thule was playing so well and not even totally 100%. I think Alumu is one of the better defensive tackles in conference now. But you just see how that unit, I mean, they stood tall. They were not getting pushed around at all. I didn't think by that Washington or Oregon State offensive line that's been doing that to everybody. And that's, again, that type of game, that physicality, that what they need to have to go be very competitive in the Big Ten. It looks like they kind of have
That's
that.
by far my biggest takeaway is the front 7. And if you like open the box score, like Oregon State, finishes with 148 yards on the ground. I remind you, that is on 40 carries, under 4 yards per carry. The biggest takeaway is that Washington Huskies team last year, they don't win this football game. Like, I just don't think they were physical enough in the trenches last year to go on the road on a cold, rainy night and kind of take it to Oregon State. That's exactly what that front 7 did, though. You mentioned Thule. I mean, we were critical of the interior defensive line heading into this year, making us eat our words. I mean, that front 7 is extremely physical. You look at the back end, adding a guy like Jabbar Muhammad to that back end, massive for the Washington Huskies.
I don't think I've seen a cornerback dominate, especially that first half of that football game, in the way Jabbar Muhammad was. I mean, getting turnovers, making a ton of plays on the ball, shutting down those 2 very good wide receivers in my mind. And in the rain, that's very hard for a corner where you're reacting. You're not the one being able to put guys in conflict and you're controlling the movement. I thought the way he was playing, like that's why you go out in the transfer portal and get a Jabbar Muhammad and be able to shut down half the field, because he was playing awesome.
Another thing I have in my notes about that game is that was in the second half. I mean, the Washington defense was on the field like probably 75% of that half. And so, like, to have the depth and kind of just the toughness to go win in the fourth quarter and play your best in the fourth quarter was absolutely massive, because the offense, I think Michael Penix only had 3 drives in the second half of that game. So you're on the field a lot. You're playing an Oregon State offensive line that, if the people from the SEC want to say, oh, Washington can't compete in the trenches against the SEC, they're going to get blown out in the college football playoffs, go look at that game. I mean, Talisi Fuaga, that Oregon State tackle, he's going to go in the top 15 of the NFL draft. That Oregon State offensive line is just about as good as you'll see in the SEC. And to watch the Washington Huskies handle business up front was absolutely massive. I want to go to the offense too. And again, not the prettiest offense in the second half. Obviously, the conditions were not great. But going back to the identity of this team, Michael Penix, we know he's a dude. Going out and getting Dylan Johnson, an absolute workhorse in the transfer portal, adding that. I mean, that offensive line for the Huskies, that's a good group. We've noted that. But have that physical running back that can carry it 20 times. Be a bruiser. I get he had that fumble, but outside of that, I thought he was extremely good. Washington not necessarily being able to go to that offense, that shootout kind of offense that they like to go to, keeping it on the ground a little bit more, still able to have some success.
Yeah, and again, offensive line, very, very good for Washington. I think you're starting to see that this isn't a unit like you saw them against Utah, you saw them against Oregon, good defensive lines. Like, this is a unit that can stand up to anyone in the country, I think. And that, again, another big change is what they're doing is just being physical on both fronts. And you're right about Dylan Johnson. I mean, a guy who I think the special thing about him is he can operate in space, which you certainly need to in Washington because they do like to play with. They like to run outside the tackles. They like to use them on pitches. But like today, this was kind of the first time you got to really see him just run in between the tackles, put his shoulder in the guys and be that, like, hey, he can do that too. And we didn't necessarily get to see it a ton this year, but today in a huge, huge moment, he's running behind his pads as well as I've seen.
And then you look at Michael Penix, and I think you still see the importance of one, just having a gamer. Like we know how talented Michael Penix is when that game is on the line, 3rd and 3, rainy, cold again. And you have that connection with one of the best wide receivers in the country in Rome Odunze. I mean, it was cold, rainy. You take a look at Rome Odunze's stat line, 7 catches, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, that doesn't bother him. He's one of those guys that you could play it in 10-degree weather in the snow, and he's going to show up. He's going to make plays to win the game. But going back to that 3rd and 3 and having that chemistry between Michael Penix and Rome Odunze, when you got to have one, and you go back shoulder, and he comes down with it. That's the type of stuff. You look at former teams that have won national championships. You look at some of those Alabama teams with like the Mac Jones and some of the wide receivers he had to work with, that when you have to have it, do you have that quarterback wide receiver battery? We just watched the best quarterback wide receiver battery in the whole entire country with Mike Penix, Rome Odunze, and to see them come up when it matters in less than ideal conditions. I mean, just further evidence that this team is about as legit as any team in the country.
And you see how important that is, like having that, those two guys who are just on a different playing field than what like a standard college football, even a good standard college football team is, like Marvin Harrison at Ohio State. You notice when they need a play, they can go to him. Brock Bowers at Georgia. Like, they have kind of a trump card for defenses when a defense kind of has their number. I mean, Washington has that. And you just see the teams that don't have that in huge moments, they really struggle to go get that play. I think we've seen that. Like, we're Michigan fans. We've seen moments where you're like, man, who's going to be that guy on the outside who's going to go make a play for us? And there have been those moments where that guy just doesn't really exist. And with Odunze in Penix, with what they have, Oregon or Washington has that answer for teams.
It's special, like to have that guy that's going to go make the play, and you kind of know they're going to make that play when it matters. It's absolutely massive. You go back to the Oregon game as well, like when the chips are on and you push the chips in the middle of the table, you know you have two of the best players at their position to go make those plays. And kind of diving in, and again, we haven't watched the film. This is kind of just an instant reaction. You get outgained by Oregon State. They have more first downs than you, but you take a look at winning football. Winning football is kind of winning on the money downs. You're 7 of 13 on 3rd down. They're only 3 of 12. They're only 2 of 5 on 4th down. You take a look at, this game, Oregon State brought it. That's a legit top 10 team in the country. The conditions were all in those favors, but you look at like what it means to play winning football. And Coach DeBoer says it. And one of the favorite comments or quotes I have from him is, we're built for this. They say it all the time. And like, you're seeing that, like you say it all the time. And then you see it on the field. Like, when it matters the most, you're built for this moment. This Washington Huskies team truly believes that. And it means so much in those money downs when the chips are on the table and you're making those plays to come up with it.
Yeah, and their stars do it. And it's not just on the offensive side. Like, you see Jabbar Muhammad, again, we obviously talked a ton about him, but getting those huge plays when they needed. Bruner with that forced fumble. Huge play. Jack Westover, another guy we could probably throw into that, like, just straight up gamer category. Against Oregon, he made a couple monster plays picking that ball off the ground. You saw today when they couldn't get anything going in the passing attack, he was there on 3rd downs to make it happen. So you just have a plethora of guys led by Odunze and Penix who are the ultimate cheat code, if you will. But their guys just play big in big moments. And you kind of contrast that, frankly, with Oregon State, which is a very, very good football team. They don't have those like
good point.
closers in my mind.
Yeah, bro. I mean, that was, and we saw the difference. I mean, that Oregon State team, again, legitimate top.
Kind of arguably played better at times. You could arguably say they were the better team in a sense today, but they don't have those individuals who can go be stars in the huge moments that you need when you're going to go try to win a championship.
When you want to go win a national championship, you need those kind of players. You need that kind of culture. And again, you can tell this Washington Huskies team, they know they can go make the play to win the game. You saw it against Oregon. You saw it against Oregon State. Hell, you saw it against Arizona too. An Arizona team that's going to be top 15 in the country just laid it on Utah earlier today. This Washington Huskies team, one, resumes improving. Two, I think this team, it's nice to see them win one ugly. Because you have to do that. You're not going to go 12-0 unscathed, just dominating everyone. Georgia's had to win ugly. Michigan's had to win ugly. Ohio State's had to win ugly. The Washington Huskies showing they can win one that's ugly, that's sloppy. That's national championship caliber stuff. Again,
against a good team. This isn't like Stanford. I know the guy had to go win ugly against Stanford, which you don't want to do, but go win ugly against a really high-quality football team.
100%, 100%. Late night for the fellas. Washington fans, again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Had to jump on, talk a little Huskies football. One of the better games of college football that we saw this Saturday. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.